I'm very excited to be sitting down today with Bash Malik, the visionary activist, filmmaker, and media artist. You might know Bash's work from his unflinching and timely documentary on Raz Judah, a community race relations advisor and community elder who was tasered by police for no crime. For years, Bash has pointed his camera at injustice, using his keen filmic eye to bring viewers close up to the stories they'd most often look away from. Approaching the big, faraway issues from the intimate perspective of testimony, the real lived experiences caught in global crossfires, his subjects have included food inequality, colorism, and online radicalization, and worked on feature films with the likes of Richard Ayoade and Charles Dance. But his work always comes back to the Southwest. He's directed for a number of local musicians, bringing their radical visions to life through a dazzling repertoire of imagery. He shares his expertise with young filmmakers at Screenology Bristol, and he's a trustee on the board at Diverse Artist Network, helping artists from all sorts of different communities come together and maximize their collective strength. Now we get to go behind the lens and find out what Bash sees in his own words. How are you, Bash?
Yeah, I'm good. Thank you for having me.
I'm really, really excited to get to talk to you today. You're doing so much really interesting and like quite innovative stuff that's sort of alien to it might be alien to a lot of artists involving tech. Could you talk just a little bit about sort of some of the projects that you've been working on recently involving new technology?
Tech has been something that's always been quite an alien creation for me as an artist, and it's been pushed via Diverse Artist Network actually, who wanted me to explore tech, and at the same time they'd ask, what do you see as the future for art and diversity yourself? How can we grow as an organization? And I propose that actually we need to be looking at tech and how creative tech can maximize what we do as practitioners, and also how to reach audiences who might feel they're not welcomed in some of the spaces maybe where we showcase our art because they're not like us, or they don't look like us, they don't dress like us. And I think that's really a really valid point to use tech for good and to use tech for community futures, and how communities can come together and connect through tech, and at the same time access culture that they might not feel they are part of, as well as language barriers that tech makes spaces accessible because it's virtual and it's in a digital space that you don't have to leave your home. You don't have to feel that you need to appropriate someone else. You can be who you are in the comfort of your own home, sat on your armchair, accessing something that might be so radical that you would never have thought of accessing before the revolution of tech. And some of my projects are now really evolving from ideas around inequality and intersectionality, and how tech has been almost something that's removed from diasporic communities. And I want to try and create something that offers a way that we can use tech in a positive way, and in a way that, one, we can grow as artists, but also two, we can engage lots of different communities to use tech for good. Tech has been historically something that we see in the hands of the corporate giants or governments who have the power and the money to to develop these systems and maintain control themselves. And I've come to the realization that if we allow this to continue, we are going to be the minority. We are going to be the ones who are left behind on the ground, catching up and working out what is it that's actually happening to us. Why are we governed in this way? Why is the digital world now controlling how our future generations are thinking and what choices they are making? So my passion around tech and creativity is to create a safe space that we're not sort of creating disillusionment and maybe more propaganda and misinformation around maybe an issue with another country or an issue with a particular religion. That we can create our own truths using tech, and we can own that tech. And that is where I feel really passionate about right now.
It's so interesting that you talk about like how things like tech are being sort of removed from communities and basically taken into this like sort of far away global space. Because I feel like that's something that you address like in your actual movies a lot as well, where you sort of you start with like a like local issues, you know, individuals giving their own testimony about something important to them, like food injustice, which you've spoken about, and police racism and policing. And I feel like you take these sort of like individual bits of local testimony and then connect them interestingly to global and, you know, big faraway issues. Could you talk a little bit about like sort of why connecting local individuals or local testimony, local stories with global problems is like such a theme in your work?
Boils down to that simple idea of conflict and war and oppression doesn't just exist on our streets here in Bristol, that it's a global issue and it affects everyone. There are injustices happening all over the world. And for me, it's imperative to connect what's happening here to other parts of the world and to engage a global community to maybe learn from what's happening here and for us to learn from them. And my films, yeah, generally focus on what's happening here and in the global south and in other parts of the world. And that's, yeah, that needs to be talked about. When you talk about food insecurity, we have relied on food from around the world for decades, for centuries. We've imported food ever since I've known food to be available, and food is going to run out. And we need to find a way now to communicate what's happening around the world through film, through media, through tech, to highlight the 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 reality that the food is going to run low, and we are going to we people will go hungry, even here in the UK, and there is starvation happening. We just don't see it on our streets. But people who rely on food banks don't have access to fresh food or vegetables. Most diasporic or low income based or refugee communities don't have access to organic vegetables because they can't afford them. It's removed in the country that's supposed to be the fourth richest in the world. Why can't we actually make food accessible for all? We live in a society where the rich still remain rich and the poor remain poor. And through content and filmmaking, I feel, you know, these stories can be shared, and really the film promotes how we can all get back to growing, how we can all get our fingers muddy. Some might say my fingers are dirty, but actually mud and soil is not dirt. It's natural. We all come from the mud, we all come from the earth. And if we can't face connecting with the earth, then why are we even eating food? Maybe we should eat air. However, I think that whole idea of what denotes as kind of dirt and what's clean is again something that's fed into corporate advertising, and you know it's all about selling products and ideas that cleanliness is in a bottle, cleanliness is wrapped up, cleanliness is something that is not touched by another human hand. And again, it's the disconnection between what is real and what is not real sort of astounds me in the media, and people believe it,
Mm.
just like governments have their own rhetoric to say that that nation is good, that nation is bad, and we somehow we believe it. And when you talk about tech, so I want to bring tech into that space, how to now flesh out the truth using first person experiences through AI and VR experiences. And one of my projects is called Come Walk in My Shoes. And those shoes are the shoes of many, and it can be the shoes of a refugee, the shoes of someone who's transgender, someone who is a black doctor, or a patient, a BIPOC patient whose healthcare is slightly compromised compared to their white counterpart. And come walk in my shoes as a white police officer. That's, you know, so we don't want to alienate anyone. We want to create this balance that why do some issues happen on the streets when it comes to violence? And with this VR experience, you're going to be allowed to change parts of what happens in the story. So you might embody the voice of the the character, or you might use your own voice, or you might embody the voice of another culture. And you could be someone who decides you're going to choose to wear a niqab, and what that feels like because it's frowned upon someone who chooses to wear a burqa doesn't mean that they're oppressed. They might choose it out of their own choice, and that should be respected. But the mainstream media wants to portray it in a way that it's oppressive, it's not right. Why is someone covering their body? That's just a choice. Some people choose to be, fully, they like to let it out, flesh out, and that's fine as well. And it's about how we create a better understanding and a deeper understanding about, okay, that's my choice, that's your choice. And the idea with the project is you could, all of us walk freely, would we engage with each other, and maybe most of us don't face any prejudice, but the slight gaze by someone who might walk past you with a burqa means nothing to the person who's deciding that that looks wrong. But for the person receiving it, that could just be such a heartbreaking experience to go through daily life like that. And the project is very much about you being the one who is the one with the gaze. Now you wear the burqa and you feel what it feels like to have the gaze on you.
I think it's just such a creative use of VR because there's all these, social problems that we in theory we know about. We hear about sort of all sorts of forms of oppression, but actually having to like imagine from a different perspective, to really like imagine being in somebody else's shoes, to have that change of perspective sort of forces us to look at what we think we know in a completely different way. Like, oh, do I know what it's like to be this other person? And I think that's sort of something that runs through a lot of your films. So like when you make a documentary, you don't just use interviews and stuff. You use also a lot of like narrative and filmic techniques you'd expect more in a feature film to sort of get that imaginative element across. Could you talk about sort of why you take that approach to documentary filmmaking?
Yes, so my process is very much from narrative fiction filmmaking, and my background is in film. When we were still shooting on film, we still are, but it's very rare now. And a lot of it has come from music videos and narrative-based music videos, as well as features and short films. And all of that care and detail that goes into narrative fiction storytelling is a really beautiful experience when you see actors and you see lines and you see the passion and the love to get the best out of a character, to make it believable, to make it feel like truth. And it's that truth that you see in documentaries, but you don't see the artistic sort of love that goes into drama in documentary. And I wanted to take something that is used in fiction, is using the best production design, artistic quality, the best kit cameras, to create something that now can be used in the factual production, and and as a way of just having a deeper, more poetic way of telling a factual story, and using it in most of my work has really created this resonance that people really feel in the films, that they talk about the human story. I really felt what the character's feeling in how the story's told. It's really deeply provocative, and it really makes me angry or really makes me feel upset. It made me cry, or I wanted to laugh or I wanted to scream, and that experience is really powerful. It lingers, it lasts. A lot of the documentaries, you see them, you watch them, and some linger, some do not, but lots just end up passing you by and move on to the next one. So for me to create such a kind of immersive way to tell a factual story it's really important, because there's so many stories out there which get overlooked and watched, and then you scroll and you click on the next one and you move on. And our world is all about just clicking, rolling, click, 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 roll, scroll, watch 5 minutes and move on. Oh, if I've had a look at that, that's great. Okay, I get it. But how do you hold the viewer from the beginning to the end? So for me to use this approach, it's all about keeping the viewer there, because you can't just watch 10, 15 minutes of a story and understand what that human being has been through.
Yeah, and I think it's really interesting, not just in the way that you sort of make your films, but also in the way that you show them for screenings as well. I know that you recently did a screening at City of Bristol College, was it? Where you sort of you did a screening of the Raz Judah documentary, and you incorporated like poetry and discussion and sort of like other sort of immersive elements. Could you talk a little bit about why you decided to sort of show the movie in that way and what the sort of effect was?
Yeah, because so to create screening events where we are not just the third person watching it, we become the first person is the idea to create an event where we immerse in the narrative, we immerse in the poetry, we see something live, we interact with it, we feel it on a much deeper level that, you know, our soul and our brain is locked into what's happening and having poetry from around the world, having storytellers who talk about injustices in South Africa or stories from the Caribbean or stories from the other parts of the world. I think again, it's bringing the sort of global narrative into the space, and that's the reason why I create these experiences where people can go away feeling like they've been enriched and they've come to something that's not just been a screening, but it's been something that has left a really powerful sort of memory in their soul and the way they think about other people and each other and the discussions, having conversations after the film where people can openly express how they feel about what they've experienced or maybe some of the topics and the themes. It's again a way of connecting creatives and artists to the public because art is very superficial. You know, it is very removed from the public space, and to create something where the public can get close to the creators and discuss and share ideas and maybe experiences they've been through is the way we create a longer, much more deeper way of then understanding how we can all work together.
And that certainly seems to be the diverse artist network, like, ethos as well. And I know that you recently, speaking of poetry, you recently actually read a poem at the, Malcolm X Community Center, Dan Showcase event. Could you talk a little bit about that, like, event and, like, what it was like to have sort of all these different communities of artists that maybe don't usually speak to each other coming in one place?
Yeah. So this is at the Malcolm X Community Center, and there's a open mic, and no one was signing up for the poetry. So Bandana said, "Right, put Bash down." It's like, what? No, I'm not on the stage. I don't do stage. I'm behind. You know, I'm comfortable guiding people and fleshing out what needs to happen, what feels honest, what feels believable. You know, that's my safe space, directing and, you know, looking at kind of the vision and creating it, and yeah, giving others the confidence to then deliver something that I feel, okay, that's amazing. I fully believe that, and then to give that to others. But to be in that position was really uncomfortable for me, and it really challenged my own sense of self and security to be in a space where suddenly there's a mic in front of me and I'm reading out something I've written, because I only read out this poem at a solstice event back in December, which was organized by an organization called EcoWard. And it was around a fire and it felt really nice and it sort of, you know, in keeping, and that was okay. But to have a mic and to be at another space in the city, in a public space, yeah, it was like a big kind of deal for me. And it sort of, you know, just gave me this feeling of this is great. This is really good to be pushed, to be, you know, to be pushed into an uncomfortable position where you're not behind, you're not directing it. You you have to deliver something that you feel honest and truthful about yourself. You have to direct yourself, and that is a really challenging experience for a creative. But yeah, Vandana pushed me into it, and DZ, who are the founders of Diverse Arts Network. And since then, yeah, they've been pushing me into other spaces regarding the whole idea around tech, even though those ideas were in my head for months, but I didn't have anything sort of there external out of me. It was just in my mind, in my brain. And I thought, right, I just hold on to that for some time. And now I'm going to do some kind of project where tech becomes part of my process. However, it wasn't something I was just going to have out and here right now in this space where people are looking at it and sharing it and thinking these are really great ideas. So it's like a really big overwhelming feeling for me to create something that's not film, not music, even reading out poetry, but to create something that is much bigger, that can, engage lots of people and lots of people in a way that I never would have envisaged as a storyteller or filmmaker. So I definitely blame diverse artists for that. And it's a good problem in a way because we've always been overlooked, as diverse artists. We've never really had the space or the platform to access particular spaces to be able to get our voices out there. And they've allowed that to happen. And it's been a really overwhelming feeling. And sometimes I feel this really like deep love for what they're doing and all the great work they seem to, yeah, just do the wholeheartedly without wanting anything in return, just out of love and passion to create something that creates an inclusive world. And I said to Vandana, you keep pushing me into different spaces. It's just like, good, I keep doing it.
Yeah. But it's not just about diverse artists, it's about diverse art as well, bringing together people and also putting people into different situations and making different kinds of things than they would usually make.
When I talk about diverse artists, it's not just people from Black and global majority communities. Diverse Artist Network has people from all walks of life, from people who choose to dress in an outrageous way, and that's diversity, or someone who might be a wheelchair user, that's diversity. Someone who is Irish, that's diversity. It's not just whether it's just the shade of your skin or your cultural belief or how you dress. Diversity is everywhere, and we need to value that. We need to really treasure what that means in its deepest form, because we look at diversity and we connect it to cultural communities. But for me, it's about creating something that involves everyone, not just the majority or the global majority. It's about sort of how we create art to showcase diversity in all shapes and forms.
Mm. And it's a sort of that kind of art that you can make when you're working outside of a very hierarchical, very commercial structure, when, you have independents coming together rather than sort of bosses and workers in that way. But I know that sort of in order to make films, you have to like develop your skills, and that often involves working on more commercial projects. Not being too specific, but were there any sort of specific experiences or something like that that sort of made you think, maybe I need to be working sort of more independently, more, on different kinds of things?
Yeah, there were a few things which kind of took me to more just real organic create filmmaking, and just being involved in diverse art was in the camera department. But I did a Santander Lewis Hamilton commercial, and that was great. Everyone thought, oh, you met Lewis Hamilton. People stopped they jump in the front of the bus. So he's like such a fanatic. They just, some people just absolutely love the racing car drivers. I don't have the same passion, but some people did. However, that was great, and I think what he's doing is good. But endorsing kind of commercial banks felt unethical for me. And then the other one, there was a couple of commercials which were just about just products not good for the planet, not good for our well-being. And I felt just really quite in a sort of really difficult space, because one, they earn really well, like just crazy amount of money for one person for one day, and you're talking there's 50 or 60 people on a set, not including the location, not including the kit. I mean, you're talking just a insane amount of money for one product, and that's one commercial. And I thought, this is just wrong. This is not healthy. This is not good. One, for the planet, good for people. That a minority of people can earn just crazy amounts of money from a product, and then it's there promoted to consumers who are going to buy that product and again pay for another commercial, pay for another agency, pay for another CEO to become even richer than he is. And I just thought this is how we are creating a world where there is so much divide. So I wanted to move away, and I thought, how can I get back to the core reason why I started to become involved in film and making films? And it was all about telling stories of the voices who we don't see on screen, the unheard voices on the ground, the communities. I use the word grassroots. It is grassroots, communities who live daily life and they don't see any changes. They don't see all of these amazing opportunities. They're not meeting celebrities. They're not on a set with lots of people and everyone's really joyful because they've earned lots of money and they've done something creative. The two things just didn't connect because I felt I, you know, creativity shouldn't be a commodity. It shouldn't become a corporate entity. And that's the reason why you choose to stay in the arts. So I wanted to come away from all of that and just to, again, sort of detox and kind of purify my sort of brain and mind to have something that's holistic. And it hasn't been always easy, doing cultural art or doing art that, changes hearts and minds or changes attitudes doesn't pay as well as Lewis Hamilton Santander was for sure. But it just gives me so much sort of wealth in what people feel and what they go away with that I've just continued and continued and continued and not given up. And now I'm in a position that, yeah, it feels good that I'm able to eat something because as artists, we have to be able to eat. We have to be able to pay bills. We can't just continue making important work or art for good, art to challenge and combat intersectionality or social issues or inequality, racism or environmental injustice and not eat ourselves. We have to eat. We have to, provide for others potentially. We've got family and we've got, people who depend on us in our communities, and we have to be able to provide for them. And again, coming back to Diverse Artist Network, it's great that aside from everything I've done and all the amazing film sets I've been on, because I've worked on commercials where I've met you, Ewan McGregor and Roger Moore when he was alive, and I've met some amazing people in my life. I've been on music videos with Jessie J or Chipmunk, and I can name lots. I could reel them off the top of my head, and there'll be so many. But it's not really about reeling off all the people I've worked with because they've all been amazing. It's about coming back to what feels real and real people who are not celebrities, who are not, who don't have a fan base. That's what's real to me, because we've been convinced by social media that we need to sort of celebrate and hero worship all of these people, but they're just people at the end of the day, and they're doing what they're doing, and that's great. And I'm not criticizing what they're doing because some of these people are doing amazing work and they are fighting for good causes. They are fighting for equality and the environment, race relations. They are all working as hard as they can to highlight some of these issues. And that's great. And I think that's amazing that's happening. But also for me as a creative and for the experience I've got and what I can offer, I want to engage the people on the ground. I want it to be people who are unknown, who are unseen, and to get them seen and from the ground up, not top down. And coming back to Diverse Artists Network, that's what they do. It very much is from the ground up. And they've created some amazing opportunities for me to really just flourish and to just find myself, find who I am and find my true self and live my true self as well. And that's been kind of uncomfortable at times to get into that space and to build the confidence and to create my own voice and to use my own art or use my own writing and perform it, or to flesh out ideas that I have just kept on the sort of, just locked away and in this sort of lock in the stomach that is just there thinking, right, I don't think I'm good enough, or I don't think these ideas are going to go anywhere. And suddenly,
When you have support, it comes out.
yeah, when you've got that encouragement and you've got people giving you confidence and saying, no, you can do it. No, we want you to. We think that's a great idea. Yep, go for it. We're going to put you in. Okay, this is happening. Right. They want to see this on this date. Have you got something to show them? I'm like, yeah. I've actually got nothing. I've got nothing actually there. But yes, I'm just saying, yes, I've got it because I want it to happen. I want these partnerships. I want organizations that we work together, that we come together and we can, if they believe in me, right, I believe in you. Let's make it happen. Let's create something that can be really powerful. It's not just a throwaway goodie like you bought in a shop, a supply chain, something that you buy and you might just throw it away. You might eat half it, or you might just buy some sort of plastic, whatever, you know, object, either in whatever shape. It could be a toy, it could be, I don't know, it can be a speaker, and you might just throw it away when it breaks and buy a new one. And so for me, I just don't want that to be the world I live in now. And I want to create something that has a long lasting legacy and can be then embraced by future generations. So some of these projects I'm designing about the next generations coming through. Whereas, where tech and creative tech, if I can embrace it, maybe they can also use it for good and to pass it on. Whereas at the moment, the future generations are using AI and all of these new technologies are harmful. It's detrimental when it comes to their own well-being, how they look and what they aspire to. It's unrealistic. It's not kind. It's not loving. It's not thinking about, oh, what should I be thinking about in 50 years as a 16-year-old now? What should I be really concerned about? The majority are not thinking like that, and that is just disheartening.
Yeah, I think especially when it comes to tech, you sort of take an interesting approach because most people sort of, you know, if you're sort of worried about tech, you sort of stay away from it and you think, oh, I'm not going to use Chat GPT because it wastes all this water. I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to do that. I just want to talk about sort of like in closing, one of your more recent projects working on policing and how AI can be used to sort of give citizens more power in how they're policed. I just want to sort of talk about that last one. Would you mind sort of explaining what you're working on at the minute?
So developing two AI projects. One is a stop and search AI, and it's designed to help members of the public who have been stopped by the police. It's using IBM's Watson AI system, and we've been in discussions with IBM as well, and they're very interested in what's happening with this particular AI. Law firms are interested to invest and take it on. As well as that, it's not just about developing it from the top. It's again from the ground up. We're going to engage with community groups, get voices from young people who've been affected by harassment unfairly by members of the police, young people who were tracked, monitored, and then stopped and searched unfairly. This AI would give you the power to access it. You can speak into it and say, I've just been stopped by the police. What can I do? And it will give you options of what you can do and potential legal assistance you can access there and then. The other AI is a much bigger project, and it's about how we change how police officers are trained, how we change the model of unconscious bias training for police officers. And this is a much bigger project, and it's really ambitious. Keep being told, okay, it's a great idea, but
We should be ambitious, right?
it's just which is really ambitious. However, we've got word back from IBM on that project, and they're also really interested. And it's going to use an AI which is looking at how police officers behave when they watch violent content. And it's going to look at characteristics, human behavior. They don't even have to speak. It would just be able to pick out eye movement, facial feet, do how you express. Maybe you become vocal. Maybe you say something not intentionally, but you react to it naturally. And this model is going to pick up, what those characteristics are and whether you agree or disagree with that particular scenario which happened on a public street or in someone's home, where someone who is innocent has been, a victim of police brutality. It's just about looking at how can we improve how police officers conduct themselves when they face with members of the public.
For everybody's
What
safety.
can they do? What can the 1, 2, 3 steps, 4 steps that you can do before you engage with a member of the public as a police officer? And it's about creating safer policing for police officers. It's not about picking out mistakes or blaming or creating a system where we become biased. It's about fleshing out that, okay, look, this is wrong. This has happened. There was time to do this. What can you do in that moment? What time do you have? Do you need to really engage straight away, or can you just take a step back and go through protocol?
I think it's just such a great, way to bring together sort of like all of these sort of artistic ideas and all these different thinkers and all these different practices into like a grassroots organization that makes a really practical, like useful thing with art. And I think it's just really like a testament to like all of the great work that Diverse Artists Network and Pervasive Media Studios are doing. I'm just, it's really, really great stuff. And thank you so much for talking to us about it, Bash. Is there anything else you might want to just sort of plug really quickly before we finish?
Yeah, so we're gonna do Diverse Artists Network involved in an event on the 12th and 13th of July at West Supermare on the beach, and it's about creating a space where the local community in Weston can come and see what Diverse Artists Network offer. I'm going to be DJing and on the mic, so it's going to be in a completely different space to what you've seen when it comes to my filmmaking and storytelling. But again, big thanks to Vandana and Deezy. They brought me back DJing because before film, I was a DJ. I produced music. I played in lots of big clubs. It was electronic music, and it was great. But again, the electronic stage, I feel, feels very sort of false in a way. It's amazing. It offers amazing experiences. What I mean is some of the music or the way the tracks are produced don't feel organic, real, and I'm really trying to get back to something that's organic. So now I'm playing music of different cultures. I play Latin. I play things like salsa, bachata, cumbia. I play music from the Caribbean. I play Afrobeat. This have a mixture of South Asian, Afrobeat, Latin, lots of sort of tropical themes, but also the music which feels inclusive, music which feels safe for others who might not be used to, cultural music where it's really very traditional, very sort of folk style cultural music, which can be quite off-putting for some communities because it feels just too removed from their daily life. So this would be much more like carnival. So we're going to put on a big show on the 12th and 13th
All right.
at Western Supermare on the
Awesome.
beach.
Lovely. On the beach. Great. Okay. Very tropical. Well, thank you so much, Bash. It's been a pleasure speaking with you. And thank you all for watching. This has been Charlie from Rise Collective. See you in Weston on the beach for the party.